Imagine, you're watching the World Cup final. The tension is just unbearable.
Oh, yeah. Absolute peak stress.
Exactly. It's the 85th minute. Your team is clinging to a one-goal lead, and your exhausted defender is just, well, slowly ambling over to the sideline to take a throw-in.
Right, doing the classic stall tactic.
Yeah, just desperate to kill a few seconds off the clock. But suddenly, the referee sprints over, raises a hand right in the defender's face, and just starts physically counting down on their fingers. 5, 4, 3.
Like a basketball shot clock.
Exactly like an NBA referee enforcing a shot clock.
Yeah.
Or, even crazier, picture a tense confrontation in the midfield. A player mutters something to an opponent, but they pull their jersey up over their mouth while they do it.
Which you see all the time now.
Right. But before the whistle even blows to restart play, the referee pulls out a straight red card and just sends the player off the pitch entirely.
Wow.
Not for a violent tackle, not for a punch, just for covering their mouth.
It sounds like a completely different sport at that point.
It really does.
To anyone who grew up watching traditional football, that level of micromanagement feels almost, dystopian. But the crazy thing is, those scenarios aren't hypothetical anymore. They are literally baked into the fundamental laws of the game now.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring the revolutionary and, frankly, highly controversial changes coming to the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
It's going to be a shock to a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. We want to equip you, the listener, with everything you need to know so you aren't completely caught off guard when this tournament kicks off. Because the game you thought you knew is fundamentally changing.
Yeah, from clock management to how players are even allowed to speak.
To the literal dimensions of the tournament itself. So we've pulled together a massive stack of sources to figure out the actual mechanics behind these shifts.
We've got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. We are looking at detailed video analyses from sports commentators, specifically channels like Behind the Whistle and Pet Talks Football. They track the really granular tactical minutia of the sport.
They get really into the weeds, which is great.
Yeah, and we're also pulling from extensive news reports from SBS News detailing FIFA's shifting social policies and their new anti-discrimination protocols.
Which are intense, by the way.
Very intense. And anchoring all of this, we have the literal, newly published and incredibly dense 2026 FIFA World Cup official rulebook and regulations.
Yeah, that rulebook is essentially the blueprint for the most complex sporting event in human history.
You're not wrong.
It's true. And it's not just a few minor tweaks to offside rules here. We are looking at a governing body attempting to re-engineer player behavior, referee authority, and, the commercial viability of a live broadcast all at the exact same time.
So our mission today is to extract the most critical changes from this massive stack of info, explain the exact mechanics of how these new rules work, and explore how they will fundamentally alter your viewing experience.
Because to understand why FIFA is implementing all these strict, seemingly punitive new rules...
Like the countdowns and the mouth-covering red cards.
Right, exactly. To understand that, we first have to understand the sheer unprecedented scale of this new tournament. The 2026 World Cup is undergoing an expansion so massive it completely breaks the historical math of the event.
Yeah, let's unpack this, because for decades we've been conditioned to understand the World Cup as a 32-team tournament.
Right. That's been the gold standard since, 1998 in France?
Yep, 1998. It was a perfectly symmetrical, deeply ingrained format that fans just understood intuitively. 32 teams divided into 8 groups of 4.
You play 3 group games, the top 2 advance to a round of 16. Clean, simple.
Mathematically perfect. And it created those incredibly dramatic group stage finales. But now, that entire architecture is being thrown out the window. The tournament is expanding by 50%.
Up to 48 teams.
48 teams. That is an addition of 16 entirely new nations getting a shot on the global stage. Nations that might have never dreamed of qualifying before are suddenly, booking plane tickets.
But the logistical ripple effect of adding 16 teams is staggering. To accommodate them, the total number of matches in the tournament is jumping from 64 matches up to 104 matches.
104 matches. You were essentially taking an entirely separate major international tournament, like a Copa America or an African Cup of Nations, and just stuffing it inside the existing World Cup schedule.
Yeah, it's wild. And because of that, the structure changes fundamentally. Instead of 8 groups, we now have 12 groups of 4 teams.
And this is where the qualification math for the knockout stages gets really complicated, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. If you have 12 groups and you only take the top 2 teams from each group like usual, you end up with 24 teams.
Right.
But you cannot build a clean knockout bracket with 24 teams. You need a power of 2, so 16, 32, or 64.
Okay, so how do they fix that?
So the new rules state that the top 2 teams from each of the 12 groups advance, which gives you those 24 teams. Then, to get to that magic number of 32, they advance the 8 best third-place teams across all the groups.
Wow.
Yeah, and those 32 surviving teams are funneled into a newly created knockout tier, the round of 32.
Wow. So before, if you survived the group stage, you were immediately in the round of 16. You were exactly 4 wins away from lifting the trophy.
Exactly. Now you survive the group stage, and you are in the round of 32. You have to survive an extra high-stakes knockout game before you even reach the traditional starting point.
Which means the 2 teams that eventually make it to the final will have to play 8 matches to win the tournament instead of the traditional 7.
It's a massive physical demand.
I have to inject some skepticism here, though, because traditionalists are looking at this expansion and predicting just an absolute slog.
Sure, yeah.
Is bringing in the 38th best team in the world to play against a juggernaut like Brazil or France really a good idea?
Yeah.
Aren't we just setting ourselves up for 15 different 6-0 blowouts in the group stage?
It's a valid fear.
I mean, does the casual viewer sitting on their couch really want to watch a massive powerhouse just dismantle a tiny island nation?
Well, the tactical analysts from our sources, particularly Ped Talks Football, they counter that exact concern with what they call the chaos factor.
The chaos factor.
Yeah. What's fascinating here is the logic that more teams actually inject more unpredictability into the ecosystem. Smaller nations that historically rarely, if ever, qualify.
Like who?
The sources specifically mention countries like Uzbekistan, Jordan, or Curacao. They now have a legitimate shot. And when those teams arrive, they don't play open, expansive football against Brazil.
Right, they'd get destroyed if they tried.
Exactly. They play the most grueling defensive, backs-against-the-wall style imaginable. They park the bus. They fight for their lives.
So it's just 90 minutes of pure defense.
Yeah, and that sets the stage for massive underdog stories.
Yeah.
A small country making their debut, absorbing pressure for 89 minutes, and scoring on a lucky counterattack to knock out a giant.
Oh, wow.
That unscripted drama is exactly what a 48-team format is built to generate.
Okay, I hear the chaos factor argument, but I still wonder if one Cinderella story is worth sitting through a dozen lopsided matches.
Fair point.
Although the mechanics of how teams advance from this new group stage might actually solve a different, very real problem that plagued the old 32-team format. The dreaded dead games.
Oh man, the dead games were a massive commercial and competitive issue.
Because in the old format, when you reached that third and final match at the group stage, you frequently encountered scenarios where the math was already settled.
Right. One team had won their first 2 games and was guaranteed to advance. The team they were playing had lost their first 2 games and was mathematically eliminated.
So you had these incredibly boring, low-stakes matches. The manager of the winning team would bench all their star players to avoid injuries, and the eliminated team was literally just waiting to go to the airport.
It was terrible television, and it was unfair to the fans who paid thousands of dollars to be in the stadium.
But under this new system, because the 8 best third-place teams also advance, those mathematical lifelines are extended drastically, right?
Drastically. Almost nobody is eliminated after 2 games now. Every single goal, every single yellow card, every single corner kick matters until the final whistle of the final group stage game across all 12 groups.
So goal difference becomes incredibly vital.
Hugely vital. Even if a team loses their first 2 matches, if they can manage to win their third game by 3 or 4 goals, they might just sneak into the round of 32 as that 8th best third-place team.
That's crazy.
Our sources actually point to a perfect historical precedent for how thrilling this can be. Portugal in the 2016 European Championship.
Oh, right, because that tournament used a very similar 24-team format where third-place teams could advance.
Exactly, and Portugal's group stage was a masterclass in scraping by. They didn't win a single game in their group.
Wait, really? Not one?
Not one. They drew against Iceland, they drew against Austria, and they drew against Hungary. They finished 3rd in their group with just 3 points.
Wow. In a traditional format, they would have been sent home immediately.
Pack your bags. Right. But because of the third-place advancement rule, they squeaked into the knockout rounds as one of the best third-place teams.
And then what happened?
From there, they found their rhythm, ground out victory after victory, and ended up winning the entire European Championship.
No way. That is the exact dream FIFA is selling for 2026.
Yep. They want teams fighting tooth and nail in the 95th minute of a group stage game, knowing that one late goal could be the difference between flying home or going on a run to the final.
Okay, that makes for great television, but let's look at the physical reality of an 8-game tournament. Our sources talk extensively about the sports science data.
Yeah, the physiological toll is going to be immense.
It shows that as fatigue builds up over a summer tournament, the quality of play fundamentally degrades. Players run less, they sprint less, their tactical discipline just falls apart.
And remember, we are talking about athletes who will have just finished a grueling 50 or 60 game season for their club teams in Europe or South America.
Right. Then they fly across multiple time zones to North America. They will be playing in the sweltering heat and humidity of places like Miami, Houston, or Monterey in the dead of summer.
It's brutal.
And FIFA is demanding they play an extra high-intensity, do-or-die knockout match. We are pushing human physiology to the absolute breaking point.
We really are. And when players reach that level of extreme exhaustion, their behavior on the pitch adapts.
How so?
Well, their greatest incentive is no longer to press the ball or make a blistering run down the wing. Their incentive is to catch their breath. Their incentive is to stall the game, break the opponent's momentum, and run the clock down.
Which means the new format inherently encourages time wasting.
Exactly.
And that brings us directly to FIFA's aggressive, uncompromising new war on time wasting. Because if they are adding 40 extra matches to the calendar, they cannot afford for the actual product on the field to devolve into players standing around catching their breath for half the broadcast.
They are attacking the culture of time wasting at its very foundation. Let's start with the rule change that is going to be the most visually jarring for fans watching at home.
The 5-second restart.
Yes. According to the behind-the-whistle breakdown, referees will now be empowered to issue a strict visual 5-second countdown for throw-ins and goal kicks.
Okay, so let me get this straight. A ball goes out of bounds,
Yep.
a player picks it up, and the referee literally holds their hand up and counts down on their fingers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Physically counting down, yes.
And if the time expires before the player puts the ball back into play, what happens?
The possession instantly flips.
Instantly.
Yep. If a team takes too long on a throw-in, the referee blows the whistle, and the opposing team is awarded the throw-in from that exact spot.
Wow.
And if a goalkeeper takes too long on a goal pick, and this is the truly revolutionary part, it becomes an opposition corner kick.
A corner kick. That is a massive, high-danger scoring opportunity being handed to the opponent simply because a goalie dawdled.
It's a huge punishment.
Think about what this does to the psychology of the players on the pitch. Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the last time you watched your team clinging to a 1-0 lead late in a game.
You're sweating on the couch.
Right. You were probably begging your player to walk slower to the sideline. Traditionally, a player taking a throw-in the 88th minute would hold the ball, point vaguely at their teammates, wipe the ball on their shirt.
Maybe stretch their calf muscles a little bit.
Exactly. Anything to bleed 20 or 30 seconds off the clock. But now, the referee is standing 2 feet away, counting down their life.
The anxiety that is going to create is wild.
You know, if you hit 0, you're giving the other team the ball in a dangerous area. Players are going to rush, they are going to panic, and they are going to make massive unforced errors.
And that sense of panic is entirely engineered by design.
Why, though?
The sources explain the underlying data that drove FIFA to this extreme measure. If you look at recent analytics from top-flight competitions like the Premier League or previous World Cups, a standard 90-minute football match actually only features about 50 to 55 minutes where the ball is actively in play.
Wait, really? Almost half of a standard broadcast is just dead air.
Just dead air. It's players walking slowly to fetch a ball out of bounds, goalkeepers meticulously setting up the ball on the 6-yard line, players arguing with the referee over a foul.
That is absurd.
The analyst from Ped Talks Football frames it perfectly. Fans are paying premium prices, and broadcasters are paying billions for television rights to watch action. They don't want to watch athletes standing around.
Right.
The brilliance of this new 5-second punishment is that it attacks the tactical incentive of stalling directly.
Because the old way of punishing time wasting was completely counterproductive, wasn't it?
Totally backwards.
Yeah. I mean, how did a referee handle a stalling goalkeeper before? The ref would blow the whistle, jog all the way over to the penalty box, pull out a yellow card, meticulously write the player's number in their little notebook,
Put the book away, jog back into position.
and then blow the whistle to restart. The referee was literally achieving the exact goal the time-wasting goalkeeper wanted in the first place.
A yellow card in the 88th minute was worn as a badge of honor by a defending team. It successfully ate up another 40 seconds of the clock.
Yeah, it was a reward, not a punishment.
But turning a delayed goal kick into an immediate corner kick for the opposition, that is a severe, match-altering tactical punishment.
It directly threatens their lead.
It fundamentally rewires the risk-reward calculation in the player's brain. Stalling is no longer a free way to burn the clock. It is a massive liability.
Okay, so that handles the ball going out of bounds. But what about substitutions? That has to be the most theatrical, agonizing form of time wasting in modern sport.
Oh, without a doubt.
A player's number goes up on the digital board, and suddenly an elite, world-class athlete is moving like they are wading through wet cement.
Shaking everyone's hands.
Right. They applaud all four corners of the stadium. They stop to hug the referee. They meticulously untie their boots. They high-five every single teammate. The source video accurately described it as acting like they are walking the red carpet.
And FIFA is targeting that exact red carpet behavior with the new 10-second sub-rule.
Okay, how does this one work?
Under the old laws, players were required to leave the pitch at the nearest boundary point, rather than walking all the way to the halfway line, but there was no hard time limit attached to it. The urgency was entirely left to the referee's subjective judgment.
Which usually meant no urgency at all.
Exactly. Now, players being substituted have a strict, non-negotiable 10 seconds to completely cross the boundary line.
And if they take 12 seconds, if they stop to hug the goalkeeper, what's the penalty?
The punishment falls directly on the replacement. If the outgoing player takes longer than 10 seconds to leave the pitch, the incoming substitute is barred from entering the field immediately. They must stand on the sideline and wait a full 60 seconds after play has restarted before the referee will wave them on.
Wait. So for 1 full minute of active, live game time, the team that was making the substitution is forced to play with only 10 men.
Yes, they are playing shorthanded.
That is brutal.
Consider the tactical brilliance of that punishment, though. The entire reason a manager makes a defensive substitution late in the game is to kill time and solidify the defense to protect a lead.
Right.
Under this new rule, if the player being subbed off tries to waste time, their punishment is that their defense is suddenly down a man while the opposing team attacks furiously for 60 seconds.
The dynamic completely flips.
You will see managers screaming at their own players to sprint off the field. The pressure to move quickly comes from within their own ranks rather than from the referee.
Oh, absolutely. You'll see a player look at the substitution board and suddenly burst into a 100-meter dash toward the sideline just so they don't accidentally handicap their team.
Exactly.
But this raises a very tricky question. What if a player isn't wasting time on purpose? What if they were genuinely injured?
The tactical fake injury.
Yes, the tactical fake injury is arguably the most frustrating aspect of the sport for casual viewers. The classic scenario. A team is under heavy pressure, the defenders are gassed, so a player feels a slight brush on their shoulder and suddenly goes down clutching their ankle as if they've been shot.
We've all seen it.
The game grinds to a halt, the medical staff slowly jogs out, and while they are spraying the player's ankle with magic water, the rest of the team runs to the sideline to drink water and hear tactical adjustments from the coach.
It's a tactical stoppage. It breaks the momentum of the attacking team entirely. To combat this, FIFA is introducing the 1-minute injury sit-out protocol.
Okay, tell me about this one.
The mechanics are very specific. If a player goes down and requires the medical staff to be called onto the pitch to assess them, that player must leave the field of play once they are back on their feet.
Which was always the rule, right?
Right, but here's the change. They are not allowed to return immediately. They must wait on the sideline for a full 60 seconds after the referee has blown the whistle to restart play.
Wow. So once again, the punishment is a 60-second power play for the opposition.
Yep. It serves as a massive deterrent against simulation. Going down on the pitch is no longer a free timeout for your team.
That makes sense.
Because if a player is genuinely hurt, sitting out for a minute while the medical staff conducts a proper evaluation on the sideline is just a reasonable safety measure.
Sure.
But if a player is faking it just to kill momentum, the source refers to this theatric rolling around as the Cristiano Ronaldo and Vinny Jr. special. They will now be actively sabotaging their own team's defensive shape by forcing them to survive a 10-on-11 situation for a full minute.
That is fascinating. But the rules have to account for genuine malicious fouls. Right?
They do, yeah.
Because if a striker is running full speed and a defender completely sides them down with a brutal tackle, it seems incredibly unfair to punish the striker's team by making them play with 10 men for a minute just because the guy needed medical attention after being assaulted on the pitch.
Right. The rulebook does account for that nuance with 3 major exemptions.
Yeah.
First, if the injury was the direct result of a foul that resulted in the referee issuing a yellow or red card to the offending player, the injured player is exempt.
Okay, that's fair.
They do not have to serve the 60-second sit-out. The logic is that you shouldn't be penalized for being the victim of a cardable offense.
What are the other exemptions?
Second, severe medical emergencies, specifically suspected concussions or cardiac issues, are entirely exempt and are handled under completely different, much more rigorous medical protocols.
I see.
And third, goalkeepers are exempt.
The
Yeah.
goalkeeper exemption.
Yeah.
I see a flaw here. If I'm a manager and my team is completely trapped in our own penalty box, lungs burning, and we desperately need to reorganize, I don't need my left back to fake an injury anymore. I just signal to my goalkeeper to sit down and grab his hamstring.
The analyst from Pet Talks Football points out that exact glaring loophole in the new regulation. You obviously cannot force a team to play without a goalkeeper for 60 seconds. That would fundamentally break the game.
Right, you can't have an empty net.
So the goalie exception has to remain. But the video asks openly, is it really going to solve the issue? It seems highly probable that the tactical fake injury won't disappear. It will just be entirely outsourced to the goalkeepers.
We might see a sudden epidemic rise in goalkeeper calf cramps in the 80th minute of tight matches.
It's almost guaranteed.
Still, even if the goalies do take over the sculling duties, completely eliminating the other 10 outfield players from rolling around is going to drastically speed up the pace of the game.
Absolutely.
But aggressively managing the clock is really only one half of FIFA's strategy. Controlling player behavior, specifically how players interact with and treat the match officials, is the other massive pillar of these changes.
It's a huge shift in the culture.
We are seeing a severe disciplinary crackdown aimed at commanding absolute respect for the referee.
FIFA is taking heavy direct inspiration from other sports, most notably rugby, to force a massive cultural shift in how the game is officiated. In rugby, only the captain speaks to the referee, and they usually refer to the ref as sir. Football has historically been the exact opposite.
The cornerstone of this cultural shift for 2026 is the new captain-only protocol, right?
Yes. The rules dictate that only the designated team captain, the player wearing the armband, is allowed to approach or speak to the referee regarding a decision.
And if someone else tries?
If any other player approaches the referee, surrounds them, or argues a call, they are to be issued an automatic, immediate yellow card.
Think about what a controversial call looks like right now in a major Champions League or World Cup match. The referee blows the whistle and points to the penalty spot. Instantly, within a split second, he is completely mobbed by 5 or 6 furious defending players.
It's overwhelming.
They are screaming in his face, waving their arms, bumping into him, physically intimidating him, trying to pressure him into reversing the call or walking over to the VAR monitor. It's chaotic, it's hostile, and it completely undermines the authority of the official on a global stage.
And beyond the professional level, it sets an absolutely toxic example for grassroots football. When kids see their idols screaming an inch away from a referee's face on television, they replicate that exact behavior on Sunday mornings against amateur referees.
It's a huge reason amateur leagues struggle to retain officials. Who wants to deal with that?
Exactly. By limiting interactions strictly to the captain, FIFA is attempting to mandate professional decorum from the top down. If there's a contentious foul, the players are required to step back.
So the captain handles it.
The captain speaks to the referee explains the rationale behind the decision to the captain, and the captain disseminates that information to the team. The goal is to eliminate the intimidating swarm tactic entirely.
The captain-only rule is something I think the vast majority of fans will welcome. It cleans up the image of the game.
Definitely.
But there is another disciplinary rule in this new stack of regulations that feels much more intrusive. The mouth-covering red card.
This is where it gets really controversial.
The rulebook explicitly states that if players cover their mouths during a confrontation or argument on the pitch, the referee has the authority to send them off with a straight red card, a match-ending expulsion, just for covering your mouth.
On the surface, it sounds incredibly draconian, almost paranoid.
It does.
But to understand why FIFA is implementing this, you have to understand the specific, high-profile incident that inspired it. The SBS News report provides the crucial context here.
What happened?
They detail a heated confrontation during a match involving Real Madrid's Vinicius Jr. and Benfica's Gianluca Prestiani. During a scuffle on the pitch, Prestiani pulled his jersey up over his mouth while speaking very aggressively to Vinicius Jr.
Okay.
After the match, Vinicius, who has tragically been the target of horrific, sustained racial abuse throughout his career in Spain, posted a public statement. He essentially argued that racists intentionally use this tactic of covering their mouths to hide their cowardly words from the television cameras and the referees.
Oh, I see.
But Vinicius called out the existing disciplinary protocols as completely useless because, without audio recordings or visual proof from lip reading, the referee couldn't confirm what was actually said. And Prestiani vehemently denied making any racist comments.
Wow. I understand the gravity of that specific situation, and obviously racism has absolutely no place in the sport. But taking a step back, isn't a blanket straight red card for covering your mouth a massive overreach?
That's the debate.
We live in a highly mediatized world. As an expert in the SBS piece points out, there are dozens of high-definition broadcast cameras zoomed in on these players at all times. There are literal professional lip readers employed by television networks and tabloids whose entire job is to dissect every single syllable these guys utter on the pitch and turn it into a viral tweet.
That's true. The scrutiny is insane.
Don't players have legitimate, non-malicious reasons to want a tiny shred of privacy? Maybe two teammates are covering their mouths to discuss a trick free kick routine so the opponent can't read their lips.
Yeah.
Or maybe a player's complaining to a teammate about their own manager's tactics.
Or just standard trash talk.
Right, just normal, competitive trash talk that they don't want broadcast to a billion people.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the sociologist interviewed by SBS acknowledges that players do have legitimate tactical and personal privacy concerns, but then you look at the justification coming directly from the top.
What does FIFA say?
FIFA president Gianni Infantino was asked about this, and his logic is incredibly blunt. He told Skye UK, if you don't have something to hide, you don't hide your mouth when you say something. That's it. It's as simple as that.
That is an incredibly black and white view of human interaction. The old, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear argument.
Infantino's stance is that the potential for shielding racial abuse or severe, hateful insults completely outweighs a player's right to tactical privacy or casual trash talk. FIFA's overarching theme for the 2026 regulations is the complete elimination of ambiguity.
They want everything out in the open.
They are trying to force total transparency onto the pitch. If you want to say something to an opponent during a heated confrontation, you have to say it where the cameras, the referee, and the watching world can see it. If you choose to cover your mouth, the referee is empowered to assume the absolute worst intent and issue a red card.
It is going to be utterly fascinating to see how that is actually enforced in the heat of the moment. Will a referee really have the nerve to pull a straight red card in the 89th minute of a World Cup quarterfinal just because a player put his hand over his mouth while arguing a call?
We'll find out soon enough.
But that isn't the only extreme behavioral crackdown. There is also a major formalization regarding walk-offs. If a team decides to leave the pitch in protest of a referee's decision, they will automatically forfeit the match.
Yeah, you might think a whole team walking off the pitch is something that only happens in Sunday League games, but it happened recently enough and at a high enough level of international football to severely spook FIFA's executives.
What's the story behind this one?
The rule stems directly from a wild incident at the Africa Cup of Nations, or AFCON. Senegal was playing Morocco in a highly contentious match. Senegal felt the referee was making egregiously unfair, one-sided penalty decisions against them. The frustration boiled over, and in an unprecedented act of protest, the entire Senegalese team walked off the pitch. They abandoned the field and went into the locker room for 14 minutes, leaving the referees, the opposing team, and the stadium fans in complete confusion.
14 minutes. What happened then?
Eventually, tensions cooled, they came back out, finished the match, and actually ended up winning in extra time.
Wait, really? They walk out, made their point, came back, and still won. That's incredible.
It was an incredible narrative on the pitch, but the boardroom aftermath was ruthless. Later, the African governing body stripped Senegal of their hard-fought victory and awarded the cup to Morocco.
Oh, wow.
The ruling was that by leaving the pitch, even temporarily, Senegal had effectively forfeited the match, completely regardless of the final score after they returned. FIFA is now taking that specific AFCON precedent and codifying it globally for the 2026 World Cup. If your team leaves the pitch to protest a refereeing decision, you lose the game. Period.
When you combine all these new behavioral rules, it paints a very clear, very strict picture. Captain only allowed to speak to the ref. Straight red cards for covering your mouth during an argument. Automatic match forfeits for walking off in protest.
It's all about control.
We are looking at a governing body that is demanding absolute, unquestioning submission to the match officials and heavily punishing any form of dissent, ambiguity, or disruption of the broadcast.
It is an iron-fisted approach to game management, designed to keep the 104 match television product running smoothly on schedule. But where this absolute demand for order hits a moral wall, and where FIFA faces its biggest philosophical challenge, is when player protests aren't about a bad offside call or a soft penalty, but about fundamental human rights.
And this friction is at the core of FIFA's new, highly scrutinized anti-racism protocols.
Exactly. This is an incredibly heavy topic, but it is deeply woven into the 2026 regulations. The strict management of behavior we just discussed extends beyond player-to-player conflict and directly into the stands.
To understand why these new protocols are being forced into the rulebook, we have to look at the dark reality of the numbers. According to the organization Kick It Out, which tracks and reports on discrimination in the game, the problem is getting significantly worse.
The statistics cited in the SBS report are grim. There has been a 10% overall rise in direct reports of racism in professional football since 2019. But the more alarming systemic figure is that reports of racist mass chanting, where entire sections of a stadium, thousands of people participating in coordinated abuse, are up sixfold.
A six-fold increase in mass chanting. That is a staggering escalation. It means racism in stadiums isn't just an isolated idiot shouting something. It is becoming a collective, weaponized tactic by certain fan bases.
It is, and it sets the stage for a World Cup where the threat of mass discriminatory behavior in the massive stadiums of North America is a very real, very pressing concern. So FIFA has formalized a new procedure adopting and expanding upon ideas from European policies implemented back in 2009. The most visible addition to this protocol for 2026 is the introduction of the X gesture.
So what does this all mean for the viewer? Let's explain how the X gesture works mechanically. If a player or an official is the target of racial abuse from the stands, or if they witness it happening to a teammate or an opponent, they can explicitly signal the referee by crossing their arms in front of their chest, forearm over forearm, in the shape of an X.
This physical gesture is the mandatory trigger. It initiates a formalized three-step procedure that the referee is legally mandated by FIFA to follow.
What's the first step?
Step 1. The referee stops the match immediately. Even if the referee didn't hear the abuse directly over the roar of the crowd, the player's X gesture forces a hard stoppage. The referee assesses the situation with the player, and a specific warning is broadcast over the stadium's public address system, demanding the spectators cease the abusive behavior immediately.
So they pause the game and make an announcement.
Right. During this pause, stadium security attempts to identify and remove the individuals involved. Once the warning is read, play restarts.
A public warning is a start. But if a fan base is bold enough to engage in mass chanting, a PA announcement might not deter them. What happens if the chanting continues after play restarts? At least step 2, right?
Step 2 escalates the situation drastically. If the referee determines the abuse is continuing, they suspend the match. Both teams are ordered off the pitch and sent back into the locker rooms for a mandatory 15 minutes.
Wow, just pulling everyone off the field.
Yes. This is designed to break the tension, remove the targets of the abuse from the environment, and give stadium authorities and riot police a window to address the matter in the stands physically.
I can't even imagine the bizarre, hostile tension in a stadium with 80,000 people waiting around for 15 minutes while the teams are hiding in the locker room. But let's say the 15 minutes pass, the teams bravely come back out, the whistle blows, and a pocket of fans still continues the abuse. What is the final escalation?
Step 3 is the absolute nuclear option. If the abuse continues after the 15-minute locker room suspension, the referee and the match delegates have the power to abandon the match entirely. They call it off. The game is over, right then and there, regardless of the score or the minute on the clock.
They abandon the match entirely. The implications of that are mind-boggling. Would FIFA genuinely have the guts to abandon a globally televised World Cup knockout match? We are talking about a broadcast with hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising tied to it, a match that tens of thousands of fans paid thousands of dollars in flights, hotels, and tickets to witness. Does the referee really have the power to just blow the whistle and tell the world the game is canceled?
That is the ultimate multi-million-dollar question, and our sources present two very conflicting viewpoints on how this will play out in reality.
Let's hear the official side first.
On one side, you have the official stance from FIFA and Gianni Infantino. His public rhetoric is absolute. At the 2024 FIFA Congress in Bangkok, he stated forcefully that those who behave in a racist way have to be expelled from football entirely. He preaches a strict zero-tolerance policy.
And do they actually back that up?
To FIFA's credit, the updated disciplinary code does have severe punitive teeth. If a match is abandoned due to fan abuse, the team whose fans were responsible may be forced to forfeit the result, or the match might be replayed behind completely closed doors. And we do have historical precedent for FIFA taking drastic action against massive fan bases.
You're referring to the Mexico versus Jamaica match highlighted in the SBS report.
Yes, a World Cup qualifier in September 2021. Mexico was hosting Jamaica at the legendary Azteca Stadium. The Azteca routinely holds 87,000 screaming fans. It is one of the most intimidating atmospheres in global sports.
But what happened at this game?
When the players walked out for this crucial qualifier, the massive concrete bowl was completely eerily empty. It wasn't because of COVID restrictions. It was a direct punishment from FIFA after continuous ignored warnings regarding homophobic chants by Mexican fans at previous matches.
So they just locked the fans out.
Exactly. By locking the gates of the Azteca, FIFA proved they were willing to sacrifice the ticket revenue of 87,000 fans to enforce a disciplinary measure.
That is a powerful precedent.
Yeah.
Showing they aren't afraid to punish a major federation. But there's a highly skeptical side to this narrative, too.
There is deep skepticism from player advocates. The SBS piece features a compelling interview with the chair of the Australian Professional Players Union. He argues that much of this three-step policy, while well-intentioned on paper, is essentially a complex PR exercise.
Why does he think that?
The sociologist they interviewed points out what they call the competing imperatives. You have a referee trying to enforce a moral anti-racism protocol, but they are constantly bumping up against massive, immovable commercial systems.
The overwhelming the game must go on mentality of live television.
Precisely. Live television broadcasters demand the completion of the product they paid billions for. The critics argue that the zero-tolerance policy sounds great in a press conference, but in practice, the intense commercial and geopolitical pressure to finish the broadcast will almost always override the urge to abandon the match at step 3.
Okay, I see.
But here is where the critics point out a massive, glaring contradiction in FIFA's new rulebook. Think back to the disciplinary rules we discussed just a few minutes ago. The new rule where a team automatically forfeits if they walk off the pitch.
The Senegal rule. If you leave the pitch in protest, you lose the match.
Exactly. The Australian Players Union chair argues that we have reached a breaking point where if the three-step procedure fails, if the referee is too afraid of the commercial fallout to abandon the match at step 3, and the players are still actively being abused, the players' only real recourse to protect their own mental health and human dignity is to take matters into their own hands and walk off the pitch together.
Which violates the other rule.
Right. He says unequivocally that human dignity is more important than concluding a game of football for the television networks.
So imagine the nightmare scenario brewing here. Players are being racially abused. The referee executes step 1 and step 2. They go to the locker room, they come back out. The abuse continues, but the referee, feeling the immense pressure of a global broadcast, decides the situation is manageable and refuses to trigger step 3 to abandon the match.
It's entirely possible.
The players disagree. They feel unsafe, degraded, and refuse to participate in their own abuse. So they walk off the pitch in protest. Under the new literal rule book, are those players punished with a match forfeit for standing up for their own basic human rights?
That is the exact devastating contradiction the sociologist in the source material is highlighting. FIFA is prioritizing the completion of a football match, the commercial product, while simultaneously claiming to prioritize the human dignity of its players.
It's a huge conflict of interest.
If a team walks off because they feel their human rights are being trampled, and FIFA's response is to slap them with a forfeit for not finishing the game, it sends a terrible, hypocritical message. It tells the players that the zero-tolerance policy is entirely conditional. It's conditional upon not offending major broadcasters, not getting into tricky political situations with host nations, and above all, not damaging the commercial viability of the tournament.
The tension between human rights and the commercial imperative of the show must go on is going to be the ultimate moral test for FIFA in 2026. If a player throws up that X gesture in the middle of a quarterfinal, the entire world is going to be watching intensely to see how the referee and the governing body behind them responds. Will they protect the player or protect the broadcast?
It's a huge question. And to manage all of this, to enforce these incredibly strict new behavioral rules, to manage the logistics of 104 matches, and to protect player welfare across the sprawling geography of North America, FIFA realizes that human referees are no longer sufficient.
So what are they doing?
They are turning to unprecedented, almost science fiction levels of technological upgrades. This brings us to the massive tech overhaul of the tournament.
Let's start with the officiating tech because it is light years beyond a referee with a whistle and a flag. According to the Ped Talks football breakdown, the sport is moving way beyond the traditional video assistant referee, or VAR. We are fully entering the era of AI offsides.
The AI system is incredibly sophisticated and completely removes the human element from the offside line. Before the tournament even begins, every single player on all 48 teams will be subjected to a full body scan.
Wait, a full body scan? Like in a machine?
Yeah, exactly. This creates a highly precise anatomical 3D avatar of every single athlete in FIFA's database. Then, during the matches, a network of specialized stadium cameras will track more than 10,000 distinct data points on each player's body.
Track how? Is this optical tracking or do they have to wear sensors under their jerseys?
It is advanced optical tracking. The cameras are analyzing the exact spatial position of their limbs, their torso, their kneecaps, their head, and the system tracks those 10,000 points 50 times every single second.
50 times a second. That is insane.
Furthermore, the match ball itself is equipped with an internal microchip sensor that sends data back to the server to determine the exact microscopic millisecond the ball is struck by a foot.
Think about the contrast here. For a century, offsides was determined by a human assistant referee sprinting up and down the sideline, trying to simultaneously look at a striker 50 yards away, look at a defender, and listen for the sound of a ball being kicked behind them. They were trying to eyeball if a kneecap was an inch ahead of a shoulder.
It was an impossible job.
And now, a massive server farm is processing millions of optical data points instantly to make a geometrical ruling.
The era of the human linesman guessing is completely over. The AI system processes all this data instantaneously. If there is a highly contested, incredibly close offside call, the system automatically cross-references the 10,000 data points with the exact millisecond the ball sensor fired.
And then what does it do?
It then generates a 3D replay using those pre-scanned player avatars. It will draw a virtual line and show the exact anatomical point, a toe, a shoulder, a nose that was offside. And here's the best part for the viewing experience. Fans inside the stadium and watching on TV will literally see these 3D video game-style animations broadcast on the big screens to explain the call. It's designed to provide absolute, unquestionable mathematical proof.
I can just imagine the groans in a stadium when the giant 3D animation reveals a striker's goal is disallowed because the tip of his nose was offside. It's mathematically perfect, but emotionally brutal.
It really is.
But it's not just the offside rule getting a technological boost. The powers of the video assistant referee are also expanding significantly.
Yes. The IFAB, the International Football Association Board, which is the independent body that actually writes the laws of the game, has approved expanded powers for VAR. In the past, VAR was strictly restricted to reviewing straight red cards, penalty kick decisions, and goals. It couldn't intervene on lesser fouls. Now, IFAB is allowing VAR to intervene on second yellow cards.
Which is a massive change. A second yellow card results in a red card and an expulsion, so it is just as match-altering as a straight red card.
Exactly.
But historically, because it was technically just a yellow card foul, VAR wasn't legally allowed to look at it. If a referee made a terrible mistake, fell for a dive, and gave a player a second yellow, the player was just out of luck and sent to the locker room.
That exact injustice is what this corrects. Now, if the referee makes a clear and obvious mistake on a second yellow card, VAR can step in, call the referee to the pitch-side monitor, and overturn the expulsion. They can also now intervene in cases of mistaken identity, for instance, if the referee pulls out a yellow card and books the wrong player in the middle of a chaotic, shoving scrum.
That's a good change.
And fascinatingly, competitions now have the option to allow VAR to intervene on corner kicks, provided it's a clear error as to who touched the ball last, and the error can be fixed immediately without severely delaying the restart of play.
So the eye in the sky is getting significantly sharper and more powerful. But what about the referee down on the actual grass? I saw a detail in the behind the whistle video about body cams that completely surprised me.
Oh, this is wild. Under the new laws, referees are now formally permitted to wear body cameras during matches.
Literally strapped to their chests, like police officers.
A very similar concept, yes.
Yeah.
Now, there are strict caveats to prevent this from turning into a reality TV show. Referees can't just strap a personal GoPro to their chest and upload the footage to YouTube. The cameras must be provided by, heavily encrypted, and controlled entirely by the competition organizers, in this case, FIFA.
That makes sense.
But think about the behavioral implications we discussed earlier. If a player is tempted to surround a referee and scream abuse in their face, they are now going to be staring directly into the blinking red light of a high-definition lens. The referee has a first-person, undeniable audio and visual recording of exactly what was said, how aggressive the player's body language was, and whether they covered their mouth.
It's the ultimate deterrent. If you know you are literally being recorded by the person you are yelling at, you are going to think twice about the vocabulary you use.
Absolutely.
Plus, the source video mentions how incredible that footage could eventually be for fans getting a literal referee's eye view of the sheer speed, physicality, and intensity of a World Cup match, and how useful it will be for training the next generation of referees in the academy.
The integration of technology is becoming total. But the technology isn't solely focused on catching rule breakers and enforcing discipline. It is also being heavily deployed to manage player welfare.
Which leads us to what might be the most noticeable structural change to how the game actually flows: mandatory hydration breaks.
Yes, this is a big one.
This one really stuck out to me as a fundamental shift in the sport's identity. The sources state that matches will now automatically pause around the 22nd minute of the first half and the 67th minute of the second half for exactly 3 minutes. And this happens regardless of the weather conditions. This basically splits the continuous 45-minute halves into 4 quarters, making it look much more like the NFL or the NBA.
It is the formal interruption of the continuous clock, which is sacred to football purists.
Why are they doing it then?
The primary stated reason from FIFA for this change is player safety. We have to look at the geography of the 2026 World Cup. It is being hosted jointly across the United States, Mexico, and Canada. You are going to have teams playing in the sweltering 100-degree humid heat of Miami and then flying to the high altitude of Mexico City.
Yeah, the travel alone is exhausting.
The travel schedule across multiple time zones is brutal, the climate is wildly diverse and extreme, and as we discussed at the very beginning, the expanded tournament demands players play more matches than ever before. These guaranteed hydration breaks are presented as a strict medical necessity to prevent heat stroke, cramping, and severe exhaustion.
Okay, I understand the medical argument perfectly. But as someone who loves the tactical chess match of sports, I look at a guaranteed 3-minute break right in the middle of a half, and I don't just see a water break, I see a timeout. I see a coach pulling out a whiteboard and markers. How are managers going to exploit this?
Oh, this raises an important question. They are going to exploit it ruthlessly, and it will change how matches are coached. Ped Talks Football breaks this tactical evolution down brilliantly. You are no longer just giving the players water. You are giving the manager 2 extra mini halftimes to completely adjust their strategies. Think about how many times you've watched a team get completely overwhelmed by a high press in the first 20 minutes of a match. The manager is standing on the sideline looking completely helpless, screaming tactical instructions that his players simply cannot hear over the roar of 80,000 fans, just praying his team survives until the halftime whistle so he can get them in the locker room and fix the mismatch.
But now, right at the peak of that pressure, in the 22nd minute, the whistle blows. The game stops dead, and the manager gets his entire starting 11 gathered around him on the sideline for 3 uninterrupted minutes.
Exactly. He can fix the defensive formation, change the marking assignments, calm everybody down, and completely blunt the opponent's momentum. It adds an entirely new, highly visible layer of in-game coaching.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
But we also have to look at the cynical commercial side of the coin. Why would FIFA, an organization that is so obsessed with the continuous flow of the game, as evidenced by their incredibly aggressive war on time wasting and 5-second countdowns, willingly stop the match twice for 3 whole minutes?
The sources point out the undeniable, highly lucrative television angle.
Follow the broadcast money.
Always. A predictable, scheduled 3-minute pause in the action is an absolute goldmine for television broadcasters. In traditional football, broadcasters can only run commercials before the game, during the 15-minute halftime, and after the game. It is notoriously difficult to monetize a football broadcast compared to American football or basketball, which have constant built-in commercial breaks.
So they created some.
These mandatory hydration breaks provide a guaranteed, highly premium window to run television commercials right in the middle of the action when viewer retention and attention are at their absolute peak. As the source notes, it aligns the global sport much more closely with the phenomenally profitable television value model of the NFL.
So it's a brilliant combination.
Yes.
It's player safety, it's a massive tactical evolution for coaches, and it's a massive corporate profit driver for broadcasters, all wrapped up and disguised as a simple water bottle break.
It's very clever.
And before we move off the topic of technology, there's one more incredible detail from the sources that ties the high-end tech and the on-field tactics together. We talked about that crazy AI offside system with the 10,000 optical data points being processed 50 times a second. The Ped Talks football video mentions that this mountain of data isn't just kept in a secret FIFA vault for the referees to use.
Right. That incredibly precise 3D tracking data is actually shared with the coaching staffs of both teams immediately after the match. This acts as a massive, unexpected, democratizing force in international football.
How so?
Well, top-tier European clubs or incredibly wealthy national federations like England or Germany have the budgets to afford bespoke, cutting-edge data analysis systems and armies of statisticians. But a smaller nation like our hypothetical underdog from Curacao in the expanded 48-team format simply doesn't have those resources.
That makes sense.
Now, FIFA is essentially providing elite, military-grade athletic data analysis to every single team in the tournament for free. It levels the playing field in terms of post-match analysis, fitness tracking, and tactical preparation.
It is genuinely staggering when you step back and look at the sheer volume and scale of the changes we've discussed today. From the bracket math to the tracking data, it paints a picture of a sport undergoing a massive, highly engineered evolution.
We are looking at a complete paradigm shift in how football is governed, how it is played by the athletes, how it is officiated by the referees, and ultimately, how it is consumed by the fans.
Let's bring all of this together for you, the listener. The 2026 World Cup will not just be another fun summer tournament. With the massive expansion to 48 teams and a grueling 104 matches played across an entire continent, it will be the largest, longest, and most physically demanding football tournament in human history.
And to manage that unprecedented scale, to ensure the television product remains entertaining, and to assert total control over the pitch, it will also be the most technologically advanced and strictly regulated tournament we've ever witnessed. We have AI tracking players' limbs 50 times a second. We have referees wearing police-style body cameras. We have strict-to-the-second countdowns for throw-ins and complex 10-second penalties for substitutions.
So when you sit down on your couch in the summer of 2026 to watch these games, you are going to see things that will deeply confuse a casual fan. But now, you know the hidden mechanics at play.
You'll see the whole picture.
Exactly. When a player sees their number on the digital substitution board and suddenly sprints off the field like they're running an Olympic 100-meter dash, you'll know they aren't just being enthusiastic. They're terrified of leaving their team to play with 10 men for a full minute. When the referee starts aggressively counting down on their fingers near the corner flag, you'll know they are enforcing the new war on time wasting. When the game suddenly stops dead in the 22nd minute, you'll know it's a scheduled hydration break, acting simultaneously as a tactical timeout for the manager and a lucrative commercial break for the broadcaster.
And, perhaps more solemnly, if you see a player stop in the middle of the pitch and cross their arms in an X, you will know exactly the heavy, formalized 3-step procedure that is about to unfold. You will understand the massive geopolitical, moral, and commercial tensions that are suddenly balancing on the referee's shoulders in that highly charged moment.
You are now fully equipped. You know the rules, you know the tech, and you know the stakes. But I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over before the tournament begins, something that builds on all this source material. We've talked extensively about AI tracking players with microscopic precision. We've talked about perfectly enforced time limits, scheduled TV ad breaks, and strictly regulated emotions where you can't even cover your mouth or walk off the pitch without facing severe, match-ending punishment.
It's a lot of control.
It is a quest by FIFA for absolute order, maximum transparency, and commercial perfection. But football has always been a game defined by its messiness. It's defined by human error. It's defined by the dark arts of stalling in the corner, by the raw, unfiltered emotion of a controversial penalty call, by the chaotic, lungs-burning flow of 45 unbroken minutes. So the question is this. With all these strict new rules, all this 3D technology, and all these commercial interruptions, are we finally perfecting the beautiful game? Or are we slowly, systematically engineering the human element, the very chaos, friction, and unpredictability that makes football so incredibly special out of it entirely? Next time you see a referee raise their hand in the 85th minute and start counting down from 5, ask yourself what exactly we might be losing when that clock hits 0.